Hello and welcome. My name is Viktor and I work at Diflex, Ängelholm, Sweden. Today I will show you how to connect to and how to use the remote desktop. Using the remote desktop has many advantages over using your local computer for work. For instance, you can connect to it from any computer and any location. The first thing I want you to check is if you already have a remote desktop file on your computer. It will most likely be located on the desktop. It looks like this. It's a little computer with a little icon with two arrows. If you do not have this one, we'll go ahead and create it. So what I want you to do first of all then is open up the Start menu. Depending on your Windows version, it will look a little bit different. But anyways, on here I want you to type Remote Desktop. And there you go. The first hit here is what we're looking for. This will be called something different depending on which language your computer has, but it should be the same. It should be mostly the same. So go ahead and press that one. There you go. What I want you to do first of all here is press Show Options. There we go. And the important field here actually is the one called Computer for now. This will specify which server or which remote desktop you want to connect to. These credentials are something that primarily Diflex gives out. So if you do not have them, please contact Diflex. Anyways, let's go through the tabs here. First of all, you have Display. Here are actually two things that are of importance. First of all, if you've just opened up the remote desktop connection window, this will usually be turned to full screen. That means that if you're connecting to the remote desktop, your entire screen will be occupied by the remote desktop. If you have more than one monitor, this little option might be of interest as well. That means that the remote desktop will extend over all your monitors. So if you're primarily using the remote desktop for work, that can be advantageous. If you're using both the remote desktop and your local machine, then you most likely do not want to have this one checked. The color options are something you can ignore for now. High color 16-bit is fine. And display the connection bar when I use full screen, you want this one checked as well. What it will do is actually display a little bar on the top of your screen when you're connected to a remote desktop. And this will have a couple of different options, like you can, for instance, minimize the desktop, you can maximize, and you can close it from it. The local resources is nothing we're going to go through right now. And experience isn't something I'm going to go through either. So let's just jump right into advanced. There we go. You can ignore that one. And this one is very important. Connect from anywhere. This is what makes sure that you can connect to the remote desktop from, for example, from your home. So go ahead and press Settings here. And these settings are also something that Diflex will give you. So if you have these gateway settings, you just press Use these gateway settings, server settings, and then you type out whatever you want to, whatever you have gotten. It is a little bit different depending on where you work, so you will most likely need to consult Diflex for these settings. Anyways, I'm not going to save this one since I have one already prepared. In a normal case, you would press OK there, and then you would press General, and then, for instance, if you had a computer here, you would press Save As, and then you can save it on the desktop. And let's just call it Remote Desktop Connection, or just anything, that's fine. I'm not going to call it Remote Desktop since I already have one of those. Save. There we go. And then you can just go ahead and close this one. And there you have the one we made just now. But I'm not going to use that in this demo video. I'm going to use the one I've already prepared. So just double click it And when you do, you will most likely be greeted by a window that looks like this. Just press connect here. There we go. And then in many cases, it will already be the right address here. This should be your email address. But if it's not the right one, please press more choices, use a different account, and type in your email address here and your password for that email. I'm going to use my own account here. Okay, there we go. Now I am connected to the remote desktop. There we go. Had some minor issues there. And now I'm connected to the remote desktop. It looks a little bit bare to start off with. You might not have, for instance, an internet icon or anything like that down here. So the first thing I actually want you to do is open up the start menu right here. And this might be a little bit unfamiliar, but if you have used, for instance, Windows 8, this is the same kind of start menu that you can find in Windows 8. What's actually interesting here is this little button that looks like an arrow pointing downwards. So if you press this one, here you go. Here you see all the programs that are installed on this remote desktop server. So if you, for instance, want to open your mail, I'd suggest you right-click on this, since it's something you're going to use often. You want to you'll want to make a shortcut out of it. So right-click this one, and then there should be an option that says pin to start or pin to taskbar in your language. So I'll just go ahead and press this one, which means pin to taskbar. And then I can go ahead and close this start menu, and you'll see that I have my email program right here. This is the same for any program that you want quick and easy access to. You can just press the start menu, and I use the internet quite a bit, so I want that one to be pinned on the taskbar as well. There we go. And I use Word a lot, so I want that one to be pinned to the taskbar as well. If you'd like to make use of this area, you can just do exactly the same procedure, except that you press pin to start instead of pin to taskbar. There you go. Now I have Word pinned to the start taskbar as well, and my Internet Explorer. And this will be just like working on a regular computer, except that you're constantly connected to your company network. So if you connect it to the remote computer from home, it would be exactly the same as if you connect it to the remote desktop from a hotel or from a train or anything. It's pretty easy to work here actually. You can press, for instance, the Internet Explorer, and you will be greeted by a familiar Internet Explorer window. I can just go ahead and type in google.se. Yeah, it actually works exactly the same as a regular computer, except that you're connected to a remote desktop. So that's sort of like you're working on a computer that is somewhere else in the world. What I want you to show as well is if you go into the File Explorer, let's say you have a file on the remote desktop that you want to be able to use locally as well. You can go to, I'll just make an example file here, so I'll press new, I'll call it example. There we go. And let's say I really need this one on my local computer, since I have a program on my local computer that I don't have on the remote desktop. Then I will just go ahead and press right click, and I will press copy. I could press Control C as well. It works exactly the same way. And then what I want to do is go ahead and minimize the remote desktop. The minimize button is this one. There we go. And now I am on my local computer again, and I can just right click and I can press paste. There we go. This example file is exactly the same as the one I had on my remote desktop. But be aware that any changes I made to it when it's on the desktop won't affect the file in the remote desktop. What I meant is, if you have this file here and you make a change, let's test, and then I go to back to the remote desktop, it'll still be empty here. This isn't always the case. If you're using files in your home folder, it will most likely be synced, so that if you change something on your local computer, it will also change on the remote desktop. Let's see here. Something that's important when you're using the remote desktop is actually logging out when you're done. This is very important since there are a couple of differences between logging out and just closing the remote desktop window. If I close it like this, my session is actually still active. So I can just go ahead and go right back here. There we go. What this does is actually occupy a session on the remote computer. This means that if you open up a bunch of programs on the remote desktop and then you just press this button, let me show you, you will be disconnected. But the programs will still be open on the remote desktop. And when you're done, it's very important to press log out instead, because it could cause potential conflicts if you, let's say you have a Word document open on the remote desktop and you want to open it locally as well on when it's located in your home folder, for instance. Then it could cause conflicts because the Word program still sees it as open from your user in the remote desktop. So what I want you to do when you're done using the remote desktop is go to the Start menu, press your name in the top right corner, and press Log Out. This is very important to do when you're done with the remote desktop. You can still press the disconnect button or the X that was up here when you need to continue doing your work, just like, let's say 5 minutes after or something like that, and you just need to grab a coffee or anything like that. But when you're completely done using the remote desktop, I want you to press log out there. That's it. Now we have gone through how to use the remote desktop, or the very basics of it actually. As I said in the start of the video, there are many advantages to doing this. For instance, you always have access to the same files, no matter what happens to your computer. The remote desktop will always look the same, so you can't really lose any kind of files, or you can't really lose anything, and you will always have access to exactly the same files, and your desktop will always look the same. If you get a new computer, there's usually some setup that you have to do aside from the base installation that Diflex does. But this should cover the very basics of how to use the remote desktop and how to connect to it. If you need any further help, you can always contact Diflex.